What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we are going to be reviewing all of the Saints FC players this season out of 10 and seeing which players rank the highest. As always, if you are watching this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. I can see that about 70% of you are watching these videos but aren't actually yet subbed to the channel. So if you can, please sub, that would be a massive help. Enough waffling, let's get into the video. So Saints are back in the Premier League after a 1-year absence, and I have to say I'm absolutely buzzing. I can't wait for the season to start already. The transfer rumours are going ins and outs, all that sort of pre-season buzz. I just want to see the fixtures come out and get to that first game of season. But before that, I just want to talk through all of these Saints players, give them a rating out of 10, and just see which one of those actually comes out the highest. So let's start with the goalkeepers. And for the first sort of 80% of the season, it was Gavin Bazunu. He got injured the start of this year, and it's funny because when it happened, everyone was like, "Oh, our season's over," and it's strange because Bazunu suits the style of football which Russell Martin wants to play. He's good with his feet. However, he does let in those shots where there are question marks. And then when he got injured, McCarthy then came in and actually did a very, very good job. And I would say he was very, very efficient. He made the saves that he should make. He did everything very calmly, looked experienced, and just was very, very solid. So for me this season, I'm going to give Bazunu a 6 out of 10. The difficult thing for him is that obviously he's now injured for a very, very long time, and Saints are going to sign a goalkeeper. So we may not actually see him in a Saints shirt anymore. They could sign someone. They could maybe sign McCarthy as the number 2. And yeah, I do think he's really, really going to struggle getting back into the team. So yeah, for me, Bazunu this season, 6 out of 10. And as I just mentioned, Alex McCarthy came into the team fairly recently and did a very, very stellar job. He was very solid, did everything very calmly, looked experienced, and basically made the saves which you would expect a keeper to make, which Bazunu wasn't really doing. And yeah, I mean, I think we just played better as a team with him, looked a lot more solid. And although we only had a small sample size of fixtures to actually see him, I'm going to rate him 8 out of 10. Okay, so moving on to the defenders, I'm going to start with one of my favourite Saints players, which is Kyle Walker-Peters. He's way too good for the Championship, and he showed it this season. He was very consistently our best player. Whether or not he signs a new contract, I do not know. There's going to be a lot of people after him. If he does stay, he's a really experienced Premier League player. And yeah, I think when Saints signed him, it was about 10 to 15 million, which is an absolute bargain. And for me, this season, he was absolutely a 10 out of 10. Now, on to the next player, which is Ryan Manning, who came in this season from Swansea. He followed Russell Martin. Now, Manning is an interesting one because he suits the Martin style of play. He's very, very good on the ball, has a wand of a left foot, bombs up and down that left flank. However, I do feel at times going the other way and actually doing his job as a defender, he can be a little bit lax. And there were quite a few goals where he was at fault at some point in the move. And yeah, he wasn't a consistent starter in the team. Sometimes James Bree played left back. Sometimes Walker-Peters did. And most recently, Jack Stevens was playing there. So I'm going to score him a 6 out of 10. He was fairly good when he did play, but he just wasn't a consistent starter. And then we move on to the club captain, Jack Stevens. And Stevens had quite a weird season. He started off playing in the team, then got injured, and the team formed a really good partnership with Howard Bellis and Jan Bednarak. And there was a lot of people that when Stevens came back into the team were calling for him to actually, not play. He sort of disrupted a really solid team that went on that long unbeaten run. However, I do think he brings a lot of character to the Saints team. He's a very, very good leader, and while sometimes he does make errors on the pitch and maybe lacks a little bit of that Premier League quality moving forwards, I think he brings a lot to the rest of the team and helps everyone else play better. So for that reason, I'm going to score Jack Stevens 7 out of 10. Now onto the backup right back, James Bree. Now, this one's quite a difficult one to actually score because he didn't really get that many opportunities. However, he did play quite a few games in that streak where we were unbeaten. And to be fair, when he has played for us, he's looked fairly solid, has a good set piece as well. I just don't think he's got enough quality for us moving forwards. So for this season, I'm going to score him a 5 out of 10. Taylor Harwood-Bellis is up next, and I have to say he is one of my favourite Saints players. He is now also a permanent Saints player as well. There's a clause in his loan deal from Man City that if we went up, we could then sign him permanently, which we now have done. And yeah, he's an absolute gem of a player, which we've managed to get for about 20 million. Represents England at U21s, and I believe he's also the captain. He's already got that weird sort of leadership thing where he's a leader on the pitch, but he's one of our youngest players. And yeah, that's now back-to-back seasons for him, going up from the Championship last year with Burnley and then this year with us. And yeah, I think he's been an absolute hero for us this year. Plays very, very good football, comfortable on the ball. I would say the only thing that he sometimes lacks is a little bit of dominance in the air. But yeah, overall, I'm going to rate him 9 out of 10. And the last player that I'm going to rank in the back line is Jan Bednarak. Now, there was a lot of talk in the summer last season about Bednarak leaving, and there was quite a few Saints fans that sort of got on his back, and there was a little bit of discontent there from both sides. However, he came back into the team, looked very composed, has years of experience, and is a very, very key player to us. He does lack a little bit of pace and can get found out at the top level. However, for us this season, once again, has been a consistent starter. You always get a solid 8 out of 10, and that's what I'm going to rate him for this season. Okay, now into the midfield, and we move on to Flynn Downs, who arrived from West Ham on loan this season, and he was one of our best bits of business. You could see that he's way too good for the Championship. He's one of the few players that we've got that have that extra gear and can get the ball and really travel with it. And yeah, has become a big, firm Saints fan favourite. Hopefully we can sign him moving forwards. There's a little bit of talk that West Ham may want to keep him and let the new manager have a little look at him. But yeah, for Saints, he's been absolutely crucial. The only downside with him is that he has had a few injuries, and for that, I'm going to rate him 9 out of 10. Next up in the midfield, we have Joe Aribo, who has had quite a weird season for Saints. He's been in and out of the team, hasn't really been a consistent starter throughout the whole year. However, he's had these 6 to 8 game spells where he started basically every game. And yeah, in those spells, he's been very, very good for us. He's one of those weird players that can sort of play anywhere. He can play in midfield, up front, in a wide area. And that's very, very key for a team like Saints, who sometimes change systems. And he's very, very flexible at doing that. The only downside is that he hasn't really been that consistent throughout the whole season. And for me, I would like to see more goals and assists. So for the number 7, Joe Aribo, we're going to rate him 7 out of 10. On to our next midfielder, Will Smallbone, who is a local lad from Basingstoke. And he, quite similarly to Aribo, has had a bit of a stop-start season. There's been spells where he's played every game, spells where he's been in and out and rotated. However, I would say the last month of the season, he's been absolutely crucial. Scored a few big goals for Saints as well. And he's one of those players that can do a little bit of everything, but you always get 100% work rate, which I think is quite key when you've got a few other more talented players in the midfield that maybe lack that work rate. He brings that, gets up and down the pitch. And this season, I think I'm going to rate him an 8 out of 10. Stuart Armstrong is up next, and he unfortunately had a bad injury about 2 months prior to the end of the season. He was a very, very key player for Saints up to that point. I'm not sure if he's going to carry on being a Saints player. I think he's actually leaving. His contract is up. However, he's been a very consistent player for us all season. And for me, I'm going to rate him a 7 out of 10. Joe Rothwell is up next, and he arrived on loan this season from Bournemouth. He's someone that has a lot of technical prowess, however, lacks a little bit of that pace getting up and down the pitch. lacks a little bit of that physicality and has sometimes struggled for Saints. He said in a recent interview that he thought the loan move would go better than what it was. And I just think it didn't really work for both Rothwell and Saints. So I'm going to score him a 5 out of 10. Next is Kamaldeen Sulemana, who is probably the most frustrating player that I've seen play in a Saints shirt for a long, long time. He has all the talent you could want. Electric pace, good on both feet, can breeze past players like they aren't there. But he can only do it when he wants to actually do it. And there's some games where you can just see he's not that interested. Lacks a little bit of that end product, gets into some really good areas and just has a little bit of a head loss. And it's a strange one because I know that if he actually knuckles down and really focuses and gets that end product right and wants to actually be here and play and get better, he can be one of our best players by an absolute mile. But I just think he's either not happy here or he's just one of those players that has all the talent but can't actually translate that onto the pitch. So for that reason, I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10. Similarly to Sulemana, Samuel Edozie is one of those players that also has a lot of talent but struggles to actually translate it all the time onto the pitch. I think he has had a better season than Sulemana. I think he's actually our 4th, 5th top highest goal scorer. Has had a few injuries and has been in and out of the team, but I think he's probably been one of our better wide players. So this season, I'm going to score him a 6 out of 10. The other holding midfielder in the team is Shea Charles, and he arrived from Man City last season for about £15 million. He's someone that hasn't really played that consistently for us, has done okay when Flynn Downs has been injured, but he's got a lot of progress to actually make in his game. You can see that he's still actually learning the system. And I do feel like there's a lot more to actually come from him. So for this season, I'm going to rate him 5 out of 10. Our next player on the list is Wee Man, known as Ryan Fraser. He arrived on loan from Newcastle and actually had a very, very good season for us in terms of goals and assists. He went through a phase of just scoring consistently, even from the bench, and scored a lot of big goals for us. He is getting a little bit older. He isn't as fast as what he used to be. And sometimes his end product needs a little bit of work and excuse me, he does lack a little bit of that physical aspect, which might be an issue in the Premier League. But overall, he has been a great loan signing for us, and I do hope we sign him on a permanent basis. This season, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. And the last midfielder on this list is David Brooks, and similarly to the Rothwell loan deal from Bournemouth, I expected more from him, and he did show glimpses of talent and glimpses of why he's a Premier League player, but it just wasn't on a consistent basis, and he really struggled to actually nail down a starting place in the first team. Would I like to see him sign permanently? Maybe, but only if the transfer fee is something quite low. I do feel like he's still got a little bit to prove, and for that reason, I'm going to rate him this season 5 out of 10. And finally, onto the forwards, we're going to start with Adam Armstrong, who somehow didn't get into the championship team of the season. It's an absolute farce that he didn't. Had an absolute bag full of goals and assists. Wore the captain's armband when Stevens was injured. Scored a lot of goals, created a lot of goals, has been absolutely instrumental, and obviously scored the winning goal in the playoff final as well. Hopefully for us, he can translate that form into the Premier League. This season, I'm going to rate him 10 out of 10. Now on to our number 10, Che Adams, who had quite a weird season. When we got relegated, there was lots of rumours about him leaving to go to the Championship to either Wolves or Crystal Palace. That fell through. He then went through a weird phase of not really starting as much, and then suddenly hit a really good run of form. And I think he ended up at the end of the season as our second highest goal scorer. I doubt he's going to be here next season. There's a lot of talk that he's already basically sealed a move to Wolves. However, he has been very good for us this season. Has struggled a little bit in the Premier League, but for this year, I'm going to rate him 8 out of 10. Now, Ross Stewart has basically been injured the whole time that we signed him, so I think it's unfair to actually rate him. So we're going to move on instead to Sekou Mara. who basically operated as that sort of second, third choice striker at different times during the season. He's another one that is a little bit frustrating. He has all of the natural talents. Big, physical, strong, can score on both feet, good in the air. And you've seen flashes. He scored a really good goal last season against Man City. But yeah, similarly to a few of the Saints players, a lot of talent, but not a lot of end product on the pitch. So for that reason, I'm going to rate him 5 out of 10. And then finally, onto the manager, Russell Martin. Now, he's had quite a strange season. We started fairly well, then we went on, I think it was a 5-game losing streak, and there was lots of Saints fans, including myself, that were quite angry at how the team was playing. There was a 5-0 loss against Sunderland, and I was like, yeah, this guy's got to go. He's way out of his depth. His football doesn't work. And then he went on that massive unbeaten streak, whatever it was, 25 games. And we moved all the way up from 14th up to, at one point, second, but third place. And then the last 4 to 6 weeks of the season, we went through a really bad spell of losing games that we shouldn't lose and being really up and down in form. And then obviously we got through to the playoffs, and the playoffs onwards, we were basically faultless. So he's had quite an up and down season. And the only sort of gripes that I have with him is he will stick to his system no matter what. So even in the Premier League, if we're doing badly, he will not change the way that he plays, which is obviously good and bad at the same time. He has been quite up and down this season. I think if we would have gone up in the automatics, it would have been an easy 10 out of 10. But going up through the playoffs and having a few issues during the season, I'm going to rate him 9 out of 10. Okay, guys, that's going to be all for today's video. Please let me know down in the comments what you think about my Saints rankings. If you're watching and you're not subbed already, please make sure to hit that sub button, and I'll see you next time.